Thank you for joining us again today as we continue to explore the heart of God here on Daily Life Connection. Today we want to talk about God, our righteousness, Jehovah Tsidkenu. We find that first in Jeremiah chapter 22. And this prophet who encountered God in a powerful way, he came up with this conclusion as to who God was in chapter 23 in verse 6. In his days Judah will be saved, and Israel will live in safety, and this is the name by which he will be called, Jehovah Tsidkenu, the Lord our righteousness. Jeremiah said, for me, this is who God is. He's Jehovah Tsidkenu, Jehovah, God our righteousness. Well, why does that matter to you and I today? Because righteousness is a requirement for those who will be part of the kingdom of God. Well, how do we become righteous? Well, Adam and Eve tried it by going to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And they said, if we know what's right and do it, and we know what's wrong and avoid that, then we'll be godly, we'll be righteous. The problem with that is they never were able to. And all down through the centuries, nobody ever did. In Galatians, it actually says, no one ever became righteous by keeping the laws of what's right and wrong. No one. Not Moses, not Abraham, not David, not Isaiah. Nobody. Nobody was able to do that. Well, then that's a frightening thing, isn't it? If righteousness is a requirement, but nobody ever achieved it. In fact, Paul says in his writings that our righteousness, when we attempt to be righteous, when we try to be good, we go to church and we don't swear and we don't do this and we do that, we try to be good people and honest and so on, that when we do that, as far as righteousness goes, it's no better than a filthy rag. And he's not talking about something you use to clean the counter with. He's talking about filthy rags, like something you clean the toilet out with. That's our righteousness. There's not a hope. So then, is that not discouraging? No, it isn't, because Jehovah Tsidkenu. It isn't just God is righteous. God is our righteousness. God, our righteousness. Jesus said it this way in Matthew chapter 6 when he's preaching the Sermon on the Mount. He said, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. He didn't say seek your own righteousness or try hard to be righteous. He said seek God's righteousness. Well, how do we get that? I'll tell you, simply by trusting that Jesus has made us righteous. 2 Corinthians chapter 5. He who knew no sin became sin for us, so that we might become the righteousness of God. How do we do that? Well, it's just like Luke chapter 15. When the prodigal son returns home, the father says, bring out my robe, the best robe, and put it on him. That's a picture of God clothing us with his righteousness. So what did the son have to do for that? Nothing but put out his arms and let him put the robe on him. That's all we have to do, is trust that Jesus has made us righteous and rejoice in that and live in that and stop thinking that our standing of righteousness before God has anything to do with how good or bad we've been today. Because the reality is, you might have been perfect all day long, and still your righteousness is like a filthy rag compared to the robe of righteousness that God puts on us. So that's the good news for us today. God is our righteousness. He has put his robe of righteousness on us. All we have to do is accept it and stop trying to clean up our filthy clothes, our rags that we're wearing, and just pull the robe of righteousness tight around about us and rejoice in that and walk in that and live in that today. Excuse me. Because he is Jehovah Tsidkenu, God our righteousness. That's really good news today. Just rest in that, rejoice in it, and enjoy it, and give him thanks that you are completely... How righteous are you? You are as righteous as God is. Isn't that astounding? Isn't that beyond belief? Your righteousness and mine is as good as God's. Why? Because it's His. It's His righteousness that He's given us. So we can rejoice and thank Him for that today. Well, God bless. Think about Jehovah Tsidkenu today, and we'll talk again tomorrow.